start going through the questions that all of you have been posting and voting in the tool. I think I understand you also have the chat, so I'll start with this. I'll start with the most voted ones that was already introduced a little bit by Andrea. So the question is, okay, it's hard not to feel like time as a postdoc is time wasted, especially if you are thinking about transitioning to industry already and not staying in the academy world. So is it something that can be used later as experience in the data science field? After 5 years as a postdoc, are you considered entry level? What is the usefulness of this? So who wants to start sharing a little bit what they think about this? Atos?
I can say that, if you have a doctorate and you have a background in academia doing analytics, your starting level is maybe senior data scientist,
which is a very good entry level.
I would say, but you to start with that level, you really need to sort of, as I'm using the term, rebranding. So please create presence in social media. So your profile should look like, you are a data scientist. Because technically, I think you have a very, very good background if you're coming from CERN and you are a doctorate, STEM field. You will see horribly low-level technical skills when you start looking your peers. So really, my statement is that in a lot of areas there are like junior data scientists. Then typically, that's kind of a apprentice level. A lot of junior data scientists. Then data scientists, and you should target, I would say, senior data scientists. And then after that comes already the managerial roles that we have heard today. So you are able to lead teams. That's my view. But you I think make the call in a way. Do you have that ambition to go for and say that I have those skills?
Very good. Thank you, Atos. A very encouraging and inspiring. And I fully agree with him. And you saw it in the panelists today. So, and it was mentioned by somebody. Don't think that because you have this very long list of qualifications in the different job openings, you are not up to it, because probably you are one of the best placed. You don't have everything, but you have much of it, and you will notice once you are out there and once you get the job and you see yourself compared with your colleagues, how fast I think you will move into learning what is left to be really practically working in industry. So is there anybody else, any other panelists? Yeah, Andrea, go.
I wanted to add one thing to that, again, to stress one of the struggles that I found, and related to the question, how can you not feel like you're wasting time? One big change, I would say, is the change of perspective, that when you do research, you work for the sake of knowledge. Typically in industry, you work for the sake of a product. And that change of perspective means a change of attitude towards what I do, what I prioritize, what do I spend most of my resources and energies into, a change of jargon, and probably also something that we are not taught in academia, which is business. And that disconnect, it's something we can learn and everyone can learn. It doesn't mean that we're wasting time. We just need to fill that gap that brings us to a little bit of a different perspective.
Yeah, I fully agree. Thank you, Andrea. And that is something that compared to what others have to learn that don't have your strong background is relatively easy to learn. It's getting into the field and yeah, getting used to it, learning the jargon, the business jargon. Yes. I'll move to another question because I don't see any other hands raised. Also, I'm going to take one related to skills that says, physics was sought by recruiters in data science a lot like a few years ago. Now people there are specific studies in data science, machine learning, masters and PhD, who have a very more targeted training. How can we competitive with these people? Are we still good in the market? What is the trend today? Wessel.
Thank you. Yeah, I'll present myself only in the next round, but I hope I'm allowed to comment on the question.
Yeah, you are all invited, even if you,
I think that's an excellent question that kind of answers itself already and just seeks for verification. But indeed, data science right now is a core expertise that you can have. So it has become definitely more difficult for physicists to profile themselves as data scientists. But that shouldn't discourage you. You should just acknowledge that moving from physics to data science is a sideways move. And a sideways move almost always includes taking a step back and accepting that you'll be less experienced in what you're moving into. But with that said, also to connect to the previous question, having done postdocs in science or physics isn't time wasted because you've been developing yourself anyway. And what you bring to the table in any company is what you've been developing in all those years. But the challenge is to make the translation between what you learned in physics to what you will apply in data science. And you will need to learn many new things that people who've studied just data science, you will need to learn what they have learned already over the years. But the trick is to figure out what your physics expertise has an added value. And I think the added value of physics expertise is enormous, which is my bias because I'm a physicist myself. But I mean, you have worked on experiments with large amounts of data, with highly scrutinized statistics. You've seen hypotheses being that you embraced and they're really dear to you. You see them ruled out and you see that nothing is actually true until you confirm it. And this experience as a scientist, you don't get in your master's degree, whether it's physics or data science or computer science, right? So your science experience is valuable, but it's a huge challenge to sell it in today's industry market.
Okay, very positive, encouraging message. Ben had also his hand raised, so even if what he wanted to say has already been said, I encourage him to repeat it to everybody.
Okay, yeah, no. A lot of what I was going to say was mostly just said, but especially the part, because I think often this comes up in in academia industry things where it's like, oh, what's physics good for in industry, and it's a room full of physicists, and everyone says, well, physicists are just the best people, but I think the sort of like flippant answer is that I do appreciate this, and I think I definitely benefit from it. But people in let's say the rest of the world certainly respect physics and think it's people who do physicists are very smart people. So definitely lean into that. But also, I mean, on a real level, I think that physics makes you think about things. I think data scientists, people who train as data scientists, are very good at saying, here's an algorithm, this is how it works, I can use it here. I think physicists are very good at thinking about a problem, not that people who train as data scientists aren't good at thinking about problems, but that thinking about a problem, okay, what's my like 0th order guess? Okay, what are the 1st order complications? Okay, what are the things that I like? How do I think about this modularly or atomically? And I think that is something that physics in particular is very good at. And the other thing I will say is just that, like, working at CERN, you're basically already doing data scientists, and this sort of echoes what people have been saying. And it's just a question of thinking about how to present that to people. We actually, in my group, we just hired somebody who was also a physicist. We're the only two, it's not the only hire physicist. But she had done like 2 postdocs, but she was very good at saying, as presenting these things in sort of a more data sciencey way, even though it was the same content, just the way that she, was presenting it and describing it. And I think that, so those sorts of experiences and those sorts of thinking, if you can sort of phrase them in the right way, are incredibly valuable, and people in industry respect and see value in that.
I see many people nodding, so I think this is a very strong message for all of you, and I think it's very encouraging. I'll go now to a bit of a tricky questions to all of you, and I think it's very interesting. what skills were you missing? So you all went through some path of changing from physics to data science. For the ones we heard, from the ones we didn't hear, the question was also to you, what was the main thing you had to develop? Being it technical, being it soft skills, what was it? Who wants to start? Okay, Atos, go.
Yeah, for me, can be being I'm an introvert to become an extrovert, talking about business, talking about clients, partners, really kind of intensive, really understand through data science, understand human behavior was was outrageous. I've learned to like it, really opened my view to world. And the second thing I've learned, this is particularly last few years, you all know that AI has sort of revolutionized many fields. And, who could have guessed that how important, certain languages like Python becomes just few years. Suddenly, I always loved programming, R language, proper statistical language. Suddenly I noticed that I need to learn a new language. I absolutely need to learn a new language. So, and you need to be more like a programmer these days. That is quite interesting. I've noticed that the data science and data engineering field, they are really, as mentioned earlier, they are maturing. They are right now they are very rapidly changing, and kind of what does that mean, data science, data engineering, that concept is changing. But there is a maturity, and maturity really means that you need to, in many of these roles, you need to be a good programmer. So just good skills in programming takes you a long way, and particularly if you're a good programmer in Python, that makes you a star.
Okay, thank you, Atos, for sharing your experience with us. So certainly the customer side is a new area that we are not used to in the academic world, where it is a bit different. Who else wants to add? So Wessel?
Thank you. So far we focus much on technical. Oh, sorry, I want to lower my hand. On technical skills, but you mentioned soft skills. So let me address there one challenge that I have. It's simply a different culture. Academia and physics has, whether you like it or not, it has a particular culture, right? With many things that are bad about it that we talk about, like gender bias is always a hot topic in physics. And the culture is very different. You work with really different people with a very different mindset than academics. In academia, you work with academics, and 95% of the people you interact with professionally are academics, and that brings a certain culture. And that's very different outside. And I regularly have difficulty with that. I regularly have misunderstandings with people, and then I need to work hard on figuring out what happened here. Is it a language issue? Is it different assumptions we have? I found that a very interesting challenge. I find it an interesting challenge.
Yeah, it's a very interesting insight. And I think, in my opinion, there is no recipe to learn that. It's just, but already being aware of that, and being aware that we are in a very, not in a narrow, we are in a very specific field. And when one comes out, it is wider, it is different. So one has to be mentally flexible to really learn and adapt when one goes out. And you already mentioned a few points. So I wanted to ask to Cecile and Federica, who are the girls we have here today that have gone through this movement, as they mentioned a little bit, the gender bias of physics. How was for you moving? Is there any particular experience on the soft skills you want to comment?
Sorry,
go on, Cecile. No, I'll leave it to you.
So actually, yeah, I mean, for me, there was so much missing, right? But that's because I'm working on a project which combines like so many different topics that I'm always out of my comfort zone, basically, whether it is on technical topics, but also like on business, biology, like engineering, everything. I think being a physicist for that really helped, because as it was said before, you see the problem like in a very global way. You're very good at problem solving. So that definitely helped me. Just to come back very quickly to the technical things that were missing for me, maybe it's for data science and IT in general, what are the structures, like the infrastructure that's usually used in companies? So right now, like we do everything on the cloud. How do you set up like a production system? When you do an analysis, you run it, a few times and then that's it. Usually, I mean, at least that's how it was for me. In our case, we need to really set up a production system. And obviously that's something that's completely different. So that's on the technical side. And then on the business side, that was really how do you sell something that you haven't done yet? That's what we do in a startup. And that's something that I think in general in academia, you're very reluctant to do is because, well, we're not sure, we haven't done it. How could you say that you can do something that you haven't done yet? And that's what you need to do in companies, in business in general. You need to be confident that you can do it. And I think it's really completely reverting this logic of, oh no, I'm not sure and I need to prove it first. Well, no, you need investors, you need to sell something. You have to be confident that you can do it. And of course it could fail for many reasons, but you shouldn't say that to investors, for instance. So it was kind of, for us reverting the logic of being extra cautious, always very, very careful in what we're saying. We need to be on the business side for this, and we need to sell, the team and what we can do in the project. And I'm sure it's also the same case in many different business aspects.
Yes, I'm sure. Yeah, I think it is. Thank you, Cecile. This was very interesting, very complete. Federica, do you want to share?
I can totally relate to this because as a physicist, like when I make a claim, I'm always very careful, right? I say, okay, based on the data that I've seen, based on this that I analyzed, maybe I'm missing other aspects. And in the business, it's different. So people usually don't have this kind of approach. In there, I don't know if it's my personal experience or a bit more general. I realized often it's especially women that tend to be more modest in this sense when they say something. But apart from this, I mean, I was lucky in my experience. I never felt that I was treated differently for this. But our attitude is very different, I think, when we come from research, from the PhD or the postdoc, we always consider these 100, 200 effects that we still have to evaluate. And we never say this is the final answer, and I'm 100% sure that it works this way.
Yeah, that's the attitude we are used to. Yeah. Okay, thank you very much. So I'll take another question related to skills. I think we still have 8 minutes, it's fine. The second one. So it's a question about machine learning. So what level, what percentage, how much machine learning one needs to have for an entry level junior or senior position as a data scientist? Do you suggest further really deep training? Is it something that is just entry point knowledge? Who wants to comment on this one? Cecile? And then Ben, okay?
So for me, I would say you need to really understand, exactly what you do. So for instance, when I arrived at Blue Planet Ecosystems, they were using machine learning, and for instance, they weren't doing testing, or they weren't doing any evaluation on what they were getting. So of course, you need to know, really what needs to happen if you want to be fully confident in the results that you're using. And I think it's great if you can also know at least 1 or 2 tools or library really, really well, that you can, be very confident in what you do, and start a new bundle, train it, test it, do everything very well and very quickly and very confidently. So for me, this would be, you don't need to, know everything about it. You don't need to know all the techniques, but know at least one very well. And of course, get some information and learn about what's out there, what exists, and how the field is evolving too.
Okay, Thank you, Cecile. Very useful tips. Ben?
Yeah, no, I would echo a lot of what Cecile said. And the other thing I would say is that, and I think this came up before, but like different jobs will require different amounts of machine learning mastery or knowledge, right? I don't think you need to be an expert. I think, like Cecile said, you should be competent, let's say, or just in the very sense, you don't need to know every different method that's out there, but you know a few methods, you can use them, you can do whatever. Knowing the steps of, you have training, you have validation, in general, how types of machine learning works. I can tell you that in one interview I had, this company was like focused on a particular type of tree learning that I just didn't know about. And so we talked about it for a while and we talked through it, and that was fine. I think the important thing is to know enough that you can use things, know the steps, and also be like open and like mentally flexible to like pick something up, bang it around a little bit, see how it would work, and then think about how it might be implemented, just to like have like the mental fluidity to handle these things. But I don't think you need to I don't think doing like a boot camp is necessary, as long as you spend some time on your own and doing things and stuff like that.
Okay.
You know more than you think.
Okay, so you know more than you think is a message that has already been repeated. Mental fluidity for many things has already been repeated. So being open and flexible, and this you can practice even out of work in day-to-day. So very interesting. I will move to a different question, which is more, I think, strategic or general. What is the biggest challenge in data science industry at the moment? So who wants to go and start answering this one? This is very interesting. In your own opinion, you are sharing opinion. We are not, Andrea.
I can start with one perspective, which is from the from the data engineering perspective. Let me put it this way. There is a lot of interest in systems and frameworks that could help deploy machine learning at scale. There are new tools coming up. Sorry.
I was about to say that's more data engineering than data scientist, because it's good that we touch a bit there as you have the mixed profile. And I don't know, in the audience, we didn't touch the data engineering side. To me, frameworks and tools would go into that side. How would you?
I would say that, so this is my perspective. Then I'm actually curious to hear everyone else.
Yeah, we have many hands.
Yeah, I think that this is where the data scientist role and the data engineering role overlaps a little bit. So when you push the data scientist towards more the development side, someone mentioned that before, then we start spilling into this field where we start discussing how do we actually use machine learning at scale, how we use it in production environments. And this is where maybe more development expertise needs to come in, and where data engineering properly comes in to help with structure, infrastructure, and so on.
To make it happen, yeah.
Yeah, exactly, make it happen. So I think this is one of the challenges, at least on the consumer side. Lately, there's a lot of effort and a lot of companies developing tools that can help monitor large scale, large number of machine learning models and processes in production environments.
Okay, thank you. Let's go. I think next one was Atos to give his perspective.
Okay, my feeling is that the biggest problem is maybe unnecessary complexity right now. So the field is kind of an explosive development phase. Massive amount of misunderstanding, wrong expectations, just unnecessary complexity. Everyone is, using all kind of tools, approaches, ideas, and my advice would be this. I've used this many times successfully. Is go back to basics, keep it simple. You know the phrase KISS, KISS. Keep it simple, stupid. So really, your education, your solid STEM background should give you a basis to let's get back to real things that matter. And most of what you see and hear is unnecessary complexity and actually noise. Your role, I would say, would be to bring some sense to this noise, complexity.
This is a very nice response. This unnecessary complexity, because as it is a very hot field, complexity like sometimes sounds nice. So really bringing some sense and simplicity to all of it is a very nice challenge to solve by all of you future or present data scientists or engineers.
Exactly.
Roberto,
Can I add just one more thing? The earlier question was about machine learning skills, and my feeling is that you know, you guys, you have excellent skills. I'm sure you could do very fancy stuff, but usually you don't need to do that. Some basic, very solid, easy to understand, easy to sell, easy to manage, easy algorithm machine learning technique that is, you know, where you can actually get data that is solid, simple. Because you as earlier someone mentioned that you really need to put this to production. There are investors, there are users that don't barely know how to use Excel. So if you remember that, I think you're successful as a data scientist or data engineer.
very good. Thank you, Atos. Roberto?
Yeah, so for me, it was just to elaborate a bit more on what Atos said, that in my experience is explainability right now, one of the big challenge, and interpretability of the machine learning models, because you can develop the fancy algorithm, the fantastic neural network with so many layers, and but then if you're not able to justify your results and your product to the business owner, the model will never go in production. So there are techniques in machine learning now also to explain better your results and correlate maybe with the impact of each features and input. So there is a field in that that is very much developing right now, but I would say that that's one of the main challenges, at least in what I've experienced.
Okay, yes. Thank you very much, Roberto. I fully agree with this very, I think, inspiring discussion and a little bit on how the field looks like and what are the challenges. We stop this first part of the session. We move now to the second round of questions. And as I said, I will start with the one that was in the chat for Roberto. So, as you mentioned, you were working in the environment-related industry. The lack of experience on this, how did it impact the hiring on your position after physics?
So I have to say that it didn't impact so much, but because I decided before leaving CERN, because it was at the end of my fellow, to take like spend 2 weeks of my holidays to do a summer school in energy and environment. So I've learned the main concept there and the main problematics. And this was very helpful because it allowed me to have a general overview on the domain, let's say, expertise. But still, I think I was hired at EPFL in this laboratory because of my data science skill, data analysis skills. So, but it helped, let's say, to have I cannot hear you.
You did this because you had the interest on going on this field, so it was a targeted. Okay, very good.
I was interested in that field, and I thought, how can I use my the data analysis skills I developed at CERN in another domain, and particularly in the energy domain? So that was the story.
Okay, so you knew already a little bit of what was your interest, what was the direction you wanted to take, and you made the steps to prepare yourself, to put
Exactly.
yourself out there ready when there was an opportunity to be a bit ready. Okay,
Exactly.
very
Then
interesting.
I have to say that through this school, I got the news that there was a position
The
open, and
contacts,
so the contact helped me in applying there and get
yeah,
get the
once you
job.
enter the field, it's easier. Very
Yeah.
good.
Yeah.
Okay, this point that was raised at the end, the academic as a dirty word, which I think I can also share. So even if I work at CERN in IT, we deal with vendors, we deal with industry, and you see this, I have friends and colleagues in the private industry, and this is something that is out there. So I don't know how this impacts when looking for a job, and how did you all overcome it? Because you all came from the academic. Were you faced to this at the hiring stage when you were going through opportunities, through interviews, and how did you turn it into a positive point? Is this something where some of you want to comment a bit more? Cecilia.
Yes, I think it's also a cultural thing. So I know that in France, for instance, coming from academia is not very well seen. I applied in Austria where it was never a topic. So really, like it's actually considered a position like another one. Having a PhD is actually very well considered, which again is not the case in every country, right? So I think it's very country dependent. And I think you might have some work to do in turning it into something positive in some countries, and in other ones, it might just be, taken for granted that yes, it's not because it's from academia that you don't have experience, or that the experience is less worthy.
Okay, that's interesting. So different culture, different country. Wessel, you want to add something to this?
Yeah, I completely subscribe what Cecile says. About the question, how did I solve it? I didn't. I just kept on trying until I ran into a manager who did not have that bias.
Okay. Another approach, Athos? You are muted.
Okay, so I want to point out that if you're interested working at large companies, let's say multinationals, practically all of them, they have some sort of R&D function. I think for you guys, I think R&D function works pretty well, don't you think? So there, you need to have a doctorate. So no problem whatsoever. So world is full of big companies, and they are actually, as you know, big tech companies are leading the data science and AI development, and there you must have the doctorate. So it's again now what you are looking for. If you face some sort of discriminatory opinions, I think for sure that's not a company for you. Your company values data scientists with very high academic skills.
Okay, that's a very positive and a strong message, Athos. I had seen the hands of Jason and Federica. Can you share a little bit? Jason,
yes,
you start?
Very briefly, it's a remark I made earlier on about my first switch, and that the fit was around a broad range of skills and cultural fit. So, these are key things that I think people are looking for, is skills and how you're going to fit in. And I would just add to that from your side, it's your willingness and ability to integrate with the organization that you're joining, rather than being siloed as a scientist. It's your willingness to get out there and join the science with what the organization is doing.
Yeah, very useful. Federica?
My personal experience, so whether the PhD or postdoc is a competitive advantage or not, I think it really depends on the company. I've seen really the two extremes. But I think it's important if the hiring manager is not explicitly looking for PhDs to be able to speak the same language. So to let them understand that what we did was going in the direction of, for example, project management, having the maturity to work independently, requiring minimum supervision and being able to learn. So if you speak this language, I think you let them understand that it's something valuable that you can offer. And also maybe some things can be easily mitigated. So sometimes I've seen the problem is you don't know for example, the data visualization tool that the company is using. And these, I think, for people at CERN is something very easy to learn. You can spend maybe 2-3 days and then you know it. So these things, it's always good to do it before the job interview, because it will be a pity to be then rejected for this.
Because of that. Yeah, very good tip. Thank you, Federica. There are so many questions that I'm going to combine some of them. Some of you are leading teams, are in a position where you already are hiring people. So what do you check in the CVs of the people you hire? What are the key points that make you give the chance of an interview to one or the other? Do you really give this first chance of people coming fresh from academia, and how do their CVs look? Atos, I see your hand.
Okay, so first I look, does it feel right? It's a kind of overview. I think for me, that's the most important thing, is does it feel right? So it means like you are data scientist, your identity, your professional identity is a data scientist.
But how does it look right for you? What do you see to see this? It looks right as a data scientist.
Well, yeah, we have heard it several times today. It means that you are using right words, your professional identity, your profile, so it's CV, your social media, your GitHub. It shows that you identify and present yourself as a data scientist. And, you know, that we come back to this very, very crucial thing is that you are doing working in academia now. Are you really interested doing data science, and what kind of data science you're passionate about? So that is the number one thing for me. And then I think is what I'm also looking, and what I understood is a lot of my colleagues, when they hire, they are looking for someone that really is able to discuss all these data science, data engineering things. You need to present yourself in a proper manner, so to speak. So discuss, be passionate. I think it's very important to identify yourself as a data scientist, very interested on this field, and be quite passionate about things you care. You know, that wins a lot of arguments.
Thank you, Atos. Very clear, and I think it's very good that we iterate on these points, so you see how important they are. I see Ben and Roberto. Ben, you want to continue?
Yeah.
You are now.
Yeah. I think I build on what Atos said is I don't think seeing somebody as freshly coming from academia is a bad thing at all. I definitely interview people like that. The thing that I often it's cool because I think they have very interesting things to say about their experience and they bring new perspectives. When somebody is coming directly from academia, I think the thing that I engage with them the most in during interviews is to see how they explain what they do, and explain it in a way that's not just technical. And for like a very pertinent example, we were recently interviewing somebody who had worked for NIST, which is a physics national organization in the United States. And one of my questions to her was basically like, okay, you did stuff having to do with quantum selection rules in, for neutron scattering. I kind of know what that means, but this is a panel interview. So can you just tell us about what went into that, from a statistics standpoint, from modeling standpoint, like what you went, and those sorts of things I think are very important because it shows that you both have tried to think about how to communicate these things to other people, which is super important in industry, but also that you have the ability to work with folks who may not have the same sort of technical expertise that you have, which again is also very important.
Yeah, I acknowledge that. Very important. Thank you, Ben. Roberto?
Yeah, essentially is the same the same thing also for me. What I'm looking is the way in which the candidate will try to present her or his PhD thesis in a way that maybe is comprehensible also for non-specialists in the sector. And that's a skill that sometimes, I remember when I was working at CERN, we focus so much on the details and we want to explain the very last digit of our results that we lose a bit maybe the capability of talking and explaining in a bit more general way. And that's what maybe is needed to convince the hiring manager for that.
Okay. So yes, being able to convince in a general way, and I take the previous points, or really being able to talk to people that is not as technical as you. And when you are in business, I think you will have at least half of the team that is less technical than you. So it is very important. I see Gurpreet that has his hand raised. Do you want to switch on the camera and ask a question?
Can I just ask like this? I'm in a room full of. Okay, thank you very much. I'm Gurpreet, the researcher from CMS Imperial College Group. So I want to ask about this management and leadership experience from collaborations. Like, you know, that we have several coordinator roles in collaborations, for example, these level 2 and level 3 positions. And then depending on those roles, one can lead a team of a few people to up to around 100 people or so. I mean, basically at an early career research level position. Now, what is the relevance of this academic leadership and management experience for industry? Like, can we sell it to jump up to the management role in data science as well? Or you think one need mostly industrial leadership or some relevant course as well to go up to the management ladder?
Okay, very interesting question. Who takes the floor to answer? I see Atos and Cecile and Wessel. Okay, very good. Atos, you start.
Just very briefly, I think if you early on have decided to do some sort of managerial coordination tasks, it just tells you what kind of person who you are. So definitely that translates to from academia to business world. Make sure that your CV or resume shows all your extracurricular activities. If you have run a club, manage anything, it is definitely directly applicable. Just tell you what kind of person you are. You are taking that, willing to take that responsibility.
Very good. Thank you, Atos. Cecile, you were the next.
Yes, so I go also in the same direction. That fully translates to what you need in the business world. You just need to explain what that means. I'll touch a bit on that in the CV presentation, but definitely that's something you can put forward. You can, say what that level of responsibility in a collaboration means. And you definitely learned a lot from that, and that definitely translates to a lot of positions, management positions that you might have in industry. So for sure, that's something that you should advertise.
Yes, to lead a team. So yes, Wessel, you also had.
Thank you. Yeah, at the risk of just reiterating what's been said, soft skills are soft skills and they're transferable. Absolutely. Do be aware, of course, that your technical skills are not on the same topic probably as what you'll work on in the industry. So don't assume I know how to manage, so I can be a manager in that industry, because you also need the on-topic industry knowledge. Just wanted to emphasize that.